October 4th. Mr. Metz, can you get a chance to call the roll?
Gary Gross.
Here.
Jim Hall.
Here.
Todd Moore.
Here.
Christopher Ambergy.
Present.
Jerry Heidenreich.
Here.
David Cash.
Here.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Here.
You have quorum.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda tonight is our meeting minutes from September the 6th. Any revisions or changes to the minutes from our previous meetings? Okay, none? Okay, then do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Yes.
David Cash.
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich.
Yes.
Christopher Ambergy.
Yes.
Todd Moore.
Yes.
Jim Hall.
Is this for August?
No, this is for September 6th.
September 6th.
Yes.
And Gary Gross.
Abstain. Wasn't here.
Thank you.
Okay, this brings us to our first case this evening. This is case number 1523, a request by Jacoby Investments for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 1400 Woodlawn Avenue. Before we get started, we'll need to swear in Mr. Metz.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. So tonight before us on variance case 1523 for 1400 Woodlawn, we have a request by applicant Jacoby Investments for an area and dimensional variance. I would like to note that on the original agenda that was sent to you, it said use variance. It is actually an area and dimensional variance for 1400 Woodlawn Avenue. The property is zoned R4. The variance requested is to allow for a lot split that would create two non-conforming lots that would not meet the minimum site development standards set forth in the Middletown Development Code. As you see currently in the picture below, the building to the left is a duplex, which is the primary residential dwelling on the property. In the middle of the two buildings, just slightly right to that, you see the garage, and then there's another third detached building on the property. The property is zoned R4 attached residential district. The purpose of the R4 attached residential district is to provide for moderate to high density residential development, generally located in the core area of the city that reflects the historic urban development pattern in and around downtown Middletown. Here's an aerial view of what I was mentioning before. So on the corner of the lot between Woodlawn and Young, you have the duplex in yellow. In the middle of between the two buildings, if you go just a little bit south, you have the garage, and then you go a little bit further south, you have what is labeled on this for the mailing address as 607 Young Street. It is all in one parcel. The Middletown Development Code, Chapter 1204.10, Site Development Standards, Table 12044, states the minimum site standards. So for a single-family dwelling in the R4 residential district, you're looking at 125 feet lot depth, 30 foot for, well, it doesn't meet the current minimum setbacks. It's a non-conforming lot of record. But the minimum lot depth, you have the minimum lot width of 70 feet or 95 feet for a corner lot, and it is a corner lot. So I wanted to kind of give you, on the right-hand side, you'll see that the length of the property of what the lot split would be, or what they are requesting, is 108 feet, when the site development standard requires 125 feet. You have a width of 43 feet, roughly, give or take, which the minimum site development standard states 95 for a corner lot. And then for the second parcel that they are wanting to add, the length of the lot would only be 45 feet by 43 feet. That's mirrored on the image that was supported or sent to us by the applicant. They're wanting to split the lot to allow for the duplex and the garage to exist on one parcel, and then for the secondary dwelling unit on the, I guess, the south side would be its own unit, its own parcel. Should just look at that for a little bit. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance requests, meeting notice letters for the proposed variance were sent to all property owners, and all comments were forwarded to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Tonight, we have it's an area and dimensional variance review. So I'll read the review criteria now. The following factors shall be considered and weighed by the BZA to determine practical difficulty. Whether special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land or structure involved, which are not applicable generally to other lands or structures in the same zoning district. Example of such special conditions or circumstances are exceptional irregularity, narrowness, shallowness, or steepness of the lot, or adjacency to non-conforming or inharmonious uses, structures, or conditions, whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return, or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without the variance, whether the special conditions and circumstances are a direct result from the actions of the applicant, his or her agents, or prior property owners, whether the variance is substantial and is the minimum necessary to make the reasonable use of the land or structures, whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether the adjoining properties would suffer substantial detriment as a result of the variance, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services such as water, sewer, electric refuse pickup, or other vital services, whether special conditions or circumstances exist as a result of actions of the owner, whether the property owner's predicament can feasibly be obviated through some method other than a variance, whether the spirit and intent behind the code requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting a variance, whether the granting of the variance request will confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by this regulation to other lands, structures, or buildings in the same district. No single factor above may control, and not all factors may be applicable in each case. Each case shall be determined on its own facts. Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision to the Court of Common Pleas as provided in Ohio Revised Code Chapters 2505 and 2506. The applicant is present. One additional question we had at the Development Committee meeting today was our engineer asked, our Public Works Director asked, where does the water and sewer line run? So I'm hoping that the applicant will be able to ask that or answer that, because if the water and sewer line run from the duplex rearward into this, what would be the new primary structure for the property or the dwelling unit, does the water and sewer run through here, or does it come off of Young Street inwards? And where does the lateral come from? So that is a question that our Public Works Director asked. So I think it's a good question to pose. As I mentioned, the applicant is present, and that ends my staff report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Metz. Any question for Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing? Okay. This is a public hearing. Those wishing to speak in favor of the proposed variance, please come forward. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you.
Identify yourself, please.
My name is Steve Leisman, 4820 Glenway Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Sir, could you please speak into the microphone?
You want me to do it again?
It may not be on.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, it's on. My name is Steve Leisman, at 4820 Glenway Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45248. The question that he had about this particular residence does get a separate bill for sewer and water. It is separately hooked up with utilities as well as electric. So that answers that question. We're not doing any new construction. We're not adding on to the building or anything like that. This is just mainly trying to get the residence onto its own lot so that he can handle, like, being able to get a loan for getting improvements to the lot. There's a lot of changes with everything, and the banks are uncomfortable with the fact that two residences on the same lot, and they are addressed separately at this time as well.
Regarding the question about the water line, are you clear if it is connected to the home and runs, as Mr. Metz indicated, or is it separate? I know you mentioned that they are billed separately. Is it?
It's totally separated.
Okay.
So it feeds from Young Street, ties to the system from Young Street?
I have to tell the truth. I asked the owner that question. I said, because I ran into this problem like several times, because what they did is they took a garage, for instance, and they renovated it. And then I understand where you're coming from. And he said that this particular residence has its own water, and it has its own sewer, and it has its own electricity. And it's all being billed separately.
But whether it runs through the property directly to the Woodlawn property, you don't know if the
I don't know
lines
the
are
answer.
running
I don't
through
know
that
the
property
answer to
or
that.
tie into the systems on the Young Street
I
side.
never thought that this was a problem, or I would have.
I don't know if it's a problem either, except it's been brought to our attention by
I was
Public Works.
told by the owner that residence has its own services.
I think the question is not where they have their own services, is where the
Yeah, and I
water
don't have the
main
answer to
runs.
that. The city would have the answer to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the Public Works with the sewer line would have cambered that sewer line, and they would know exactly where that sewer is.
Wait, I got a question. What's your relationship? You keep referring to the owner of the back building. Is that different?
I'm the engineer.
Okay, so,
I'm the engineer and surveyor.
okay,
Oh.
okay, let me ask a different question then. Does one person own this entire setup now, or is there two people involved?
No, there's this company owns both buildings.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, I don't think they could, without a split, they couldn't, there'd have to be one owner.
Yeah, and they don't intend on, the problem is the banks hate this. Yeah, I mean, if you want that house to have any kind of renovation to it, it needs to be on its own lot. And he's spending a significant amount of money hiring me to come here and talk to you guys so that can happen. I don't think he was happy with the bill I sent him. So it was important enough for him to like hire me to do this. No, I think it's a great idea. I mean, why do you we're not building anything. It's not going to change. It allows him to go and get what he needs to fix the place up. There's parking on the street. It makes sense that the garage would go with the duplexes. I mean, they have the most residences there. I don't see where this has any detriment to anybody. It's an existing building. It's not hurting anybody because we're not changing anything. If nothing else, it allows this building to develop and become something something nice for the community. Right now, the way it sits, it's kind of like, to the bank, it's kind of like, it's hard for the bank to vision it as anything other than another apartment. And that's not what it is. It's a freestanding residence.
Yeah, the bank can't loan this person. Does Mr., who's the owner here, Leor Jacoby? He owns 1404 as well, I believe.
Oh yeah, he owns this whole property.
Yeah.
To me, when he came to talk to me, I said, look, I'm going to charge you a lot of money to do this. And I said, there's no guarantee what they're going to do. And I said, but I've been through a lot of these kind of meetings, and I said, to me, this makes sense. It'd be one thing if that was an empty lot, but it's already developed.
And somebody is currently residing in the smaller structure there?
They are, and it's addressed.
Yeah.
Do you know the history of the buildings, how long they've been in existence there?
No, I don't. No, I'm sorry.
All right.
I mean, that building's probably what, 50, 60 years old at least.
More than that.
We don't have any record of 607 Young Street. We do have record of the Woodlawn property. But
It's a cute residence. I mean, it looks like a house, and it is a house. I mean, Yeah, see it up there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really cute residence.
More attractive, basically, than the duplex.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the variance? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and we can move to deliberations. Mr. Metz, in terms of that lot split question with the water line, is there any additional details that you can share with us about that particular question and how that may influence any decision that we would make tonight?
unfortunately not. So when the Public Works Director mentioned to me that that is a question that we need to ask the applicant, we did look at our utilities base map, and it doesn't show where any of the laterals are. Sometimes we have records on file that you can click and open up and examine, and we didn't have any showing laterals to 607 Young Street. So since we didn't have any record of it, we're not sure either way, but we don't have any development records at all of 607 being built like we do majority of the primary homes. So it was thought it could be run from the duplex running south to 607, just through the backyard, but there's no way to know either way. It was just a question of, well, this is a point of concern that maybe you should mention. Because if the property does get sold, 607 gets sold to a different owner, they have an issue, the water sewer line or something backs up here, then you're having an issue where your property, the water and sewer line is running through another property to get to yours. If you don't have an easement, you don't have anything like that, then you're kind of in trouble. But there's no way to know if it comes in, connects to Young Street or it doesn't.
So they're telling you that there's a possibility that an actual main, I mean, I can understand a tap running off of a main through the property, but I don't understand any concept whereby a main, water or sewer,
Well, it wouldn't be a
piece of property.
it wouldn't be a main. So you'd have your main running off of Woodlawn Avenue. So we have a main running off Woodlawn and one running off of Young.
That makes sense.
And then we do have knowledge that there's a lateral running from Woodlawn Avenue to the duplex.
Okay?
But we have no record of this building being built. So we have no record of it coming from, we don't know if it's coming from here to the building or if it's coming off of Young Street over. It was just a point of concern, like,
I'm gonna say it's gonna be more likely coming from Young Street.
So with a lot split, if we were to approve something like this from the city's perspective, then does the city say, now there's a lot split, we need to verify whether or not the property here, I guess at 607, does have a tap, and if it does not, then the city, I guess, would require one, right? Instead of having just an open question about whether or not it's connected. Is that correct?
well, that's more done at the engineering level. I don't want to speak to that.
Okay.
My portion of it is solely just because it wouldn't meet the site development standards, therefore it requires an area and dimensional variance, which we're presenting tonight. And if this gets approved, then the lot split can continue, and that would be worked out with the engineering and surveying company, would work with our engineers to work on getting that lot split approved. Now, if it gets denied, then it gets denied and it's not going to move any forward.
So we could actually stipulate that if we chose to.
If you'd like to.
Okay.
I understand the sewer may be difficult to determine its origin, but if there's if in fact water is fed from a main on Young Street, wouldn't engineering, at least be able to visually see that there's a turn-off location someplace for the water? I would think.
Right. So our information ends when it connects to, our information ends at the main. So that would be something that, the property owner would have to have some type of information on, or, the surveying and engineering firm that they do hire.
So it is the tap that we're concerned with. We don't know
Yep.
where it's tapped in. Okay.
And it's only a concern if, let's say, it breaks on the Woodlawn property, and then the 607 Young Street property wouldn't have water or wouldn't have the sanitary line. But that, as you mentioned before, you could stipulate that there, if it does go through the Woodlawn, that there's an easement agreement or of some sort.
As this gentleman points out, that could be painful to the people paying for it to try to identify that.
I got a few questions. First off, if there was no building there, I don't think we would approve building a home there on that piece of land. It's 40 by 45 or whatever. So, but the fact that it's already there gives, in my mind, some grandfather issues. Now, the other thing that comes to mind is there's numerous lots around town that have similar situations with secondary residents on the same lot. And I want to be cautious that we don't do something here that would trigger a bunch of smaller parcels of non-conforming properties being requested of us. So that's where I'm kind of concerned at this point. Now, if somebody wants to relieve me of that concern, I'd be happy to hear the argument. If not, the only thing I can see is that the fact that it's grandfathered in. But there's other properties around town, as I said, that have this situation. So that's to us here as far as thinking about it. I want us to consider that.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
I would say as it sits, they're asking us to agree to draw a line on something that's been there, going to be there, stay there. When you drive by, it's not a shack. It seems to be a well-built residence that was built with thought and not just put up in the cover of night. It's been addressed and everything. So honestly, I don't see it hurting the integrity of the neighborhood or any changing the character or anything like that. I would say probably the biggest concern would be utilities. I personally own a property that's similar to this, and those utilities are tied in together. They are not fed separately, but it is a completely different situation as this home is oriented differently. So I would be in favor of this variance if there was a way to at least stipulate that those utilities were fed directly from Young Street, or at least did not cross the lot of the Woodlawn property.
Of course, in the alternative, if in fact they tapped in at Woodlawn,
Utility easements are done quite often, so.
yeah, and
that would be
the same owner owns both of these, there could be a easement agreement by the owner with himself or with whoever he sells this to that would allow for the servicing of those utilities, even though they encroach on the northern duplex.
And along with that, if the southern property on Young Street were to be sold, any potential buyer would be aware of that easement.
Right,
know the
be
easement,
recorded.
know what that entails.
Mortgage company would require some kind of
Correct.
agreement in order to lend money on that property.
Or we can continue it and say, go get us the answer to that question and come back.
Any other comments, concerns? I tend to agree with Mr. Wanamaker on this particular question. I think that as I look at the property, it seems to me that it makes practical sense that we would split the lot. The home there it's been there for a very long time, and while this may be a smaller lot, as you look at the overall lot, it does not change the essential character of the neighborhood, and I think it makes practical sense that you would allow these two lots to be fully developed.
I agree. And using logic on a sewer run's gotta take the shortest distance to the main, which on the house at 1400 Woodlawn will be straight out the front, and then 607 Young Street would be straight out the front to Young Street. I mean, that's logical.
Yep.
But
Well,
in water mains, I'm more concerned about sewers than I would be the water tap.
and that makes me think as well that the cost of connecting those two underneath a garage with that much of a distance would probably be more costly than just doing the run straight from Young Street at the beginning, so.
Right.
But again, we don't know for sure, so that is something that needs to be addressed either, I would say, in the variance that we grant or further along in the process by engineering or someone.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we really, are we really concerned about where the, except for the access by city public works, are we concerned about where the sewer or water is? The new owner, if Mr. Jacoby sells it to someone, that new owner is gonna be concerned because, again, money to be loaned on that is gonna raise the question by the mortgagee, as to whether their mortgage is in jeopardy because there's no water or because the water and the sewer run through another property. That would be a real concern for a mortgage company. But is it a concern for us?
Well, I appeal to common sense. It's a potential problem in our city. If we can resolve it here by stipulating certain things, I say we stipulate. Because that takes care of it for whoever comes in contact with this or touches it in any way, shape, or form in the future. Now's the time to cure it.
I could agree with that. With that being said, I think I would like to pose the motion to grant this variance with the stipulation and condition that utilities be verified to originate from Young Street and do not in any way encroach on the property on Woodlawn.
I'll second it.
Can you add in there, because if they do happen to like go out across that property line, we could give them an easement. I think the important part is, from what I'm hearing from you, is that building has separate utilities. I think that's what you're at.
That's only part of it for me. That's half of it.
Because I think that if you would just approve that condition, then that way you'll get the response that you want.
Well,
We have a motion and a second.
and to discuss on that further, I would be satisfied by an easement. I would feel more comfortable if that easement was not running underneath or through other structures, if that makes sense, again, because that's going to be a pain. So, lack of a better term, like an open ground easement, I would be amenable to. So if I could do a friendly amendment to my own motion, I'd like to move to approve the variance with a condition that the utilities for that property originate on Young Street and are separate from the Woodlawn property. However, if an easement needs to be granted, then that would be a possibility for the owner.
Is there a second?
I'll second that amended motion.
Gary Gross,
Yes.
Jim Hall,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Chris Rambergy,
Yes.
Gary Heidenreich,
Yes.
David Cash,
Yes.
and Stefan Wanamaker.
Yes.
Okay.
Like you.
Okay, that brings us to our next case this evening, case number 1923. A request by Michael Lee for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 1220 Young Street.
So tonight before us, we have a request by applicant Michael Lee for approval of this is the typo. So for a use variance for the property located at 1220 Young Street, property is zoned R4 attached residential district. The variance request is allowed for the creation of two 2-unit residential dwellings, whereas the Middletown Development Code only permits one 4-unit attached residential dwelling. So I'll dive deeper on that a little bit. So the property is here, 1220 Young Street. The applicant also owns, the property owner also owns the adjacent parcel, but the parcel that we're looking at today is the northern one. So the property is zoned R4 attached residential district. As previously mentioned, the purpose of the R4 attached residential district is to provide for moderate to high density residential development. This can be anywhere from a single family up to an attached 4-unit residential building. The Middletown Development Code, Chapter 1204.10, Site Development Standards B2 states there shall not be more than one principal building on an individual lot except as approved as a part of a planned development or as part of an improved condominium project. So on the previous application we saw there was 2 units, which was an issue. And the applicant here would like to remove essentially what was a breezeway that became covered from 2 separate buildings to create 2 2-unit residential buildings, which is not permitted by the development code. So here's the here's the connector between the 2 buildings. There's another image of it connecting to the southern building. I guess the western building. Here's a site plan of what the property owner would like to do. So, as previously mentioned, this property was a church. This is the brick portion that you saw earlier. Property owner would like to maintain this, turn it into a 2-unit residential building, remove the inner portion of the building that connects the 2, replace it with asphalt for trash cans, 3 cars, parking lot, and then unit 3 and 4 in the back. Now, the issue that it would have with the development code is that you're changing one 4-unit residential building into 2 2-unit residential buildings. So although the number of units still remains the same, it's that we are changing it from one single unit building to 2-unit buildings. Now, additionally, you'll see in this site plan and the next site plan, future plans that this property owner has for the property. Certain things of this would not be approved, such as adding an asphalt driveway in the front, filling the remaining portion between the 2 buildings completely with asphalt. There's some other issues with this site plan that we're not discussing here today. We're just solely discussing the previous site plan for the changing of the 1 4-unit residential building to 2 2-unit residential buildings. I just kind of wanted to add that caveat in, just so you understand that if you do approve it tonight, the 2 properties might not look like this in a year from now. But as the applicant did supply this, I did have to legally send it to you. So I just wanted to provide that point of clarity. So the requirement for legal notice for variance requests, meeting notice letters for the proposed variance were sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street. All comments were forwarded to the Board of Zoning Appeals. We did not receive any. Since this is a different variance than the first one, I'll go ahead and read the review criteria. In order to grant a variance, the BZA shall determine that strict compliance with the terms of this code will result in unnecessary hardship to the applicant. The applicant must demonstrate such hardship by clear and convincing evidence that all of the following criteria are satisfied. A, the property cannot be put to any economically viable use under any of the permitted uses in the zoning district in which the property is located. The variance requested stems from the condition which is unique to the property at issue and not ordinarily found in the same zone or district. The variance requested cannot otherwise be resolved by a zoning map amendment, or a zoning map amendment is not the most beneficial approach. The essential character of the neighborhood will not be substantially altered as a result of the variance. There is an existing structure that cannot be reasonably used for a permitted use or conditionally permitted use in the applicable zoning district. The proposed use is listed in Table 1204-3. The hardship condition is not created by actions of the applicant. The granting of the variance will not adversely affect the rights of the adjacent property owners or residents. The granting of the variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or general welfare. The variance will be consistent with the general spirit and intent of this code. The requested use is permitted in another district in this code, and the variance sought is the minimum that will afford relief to the applicant. Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision to the Court of the Common Pleas as provided in Ohio Revised Code Chapters 2505 and 2506. That ends my staff report, and the applicant is present.
Any questions for Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing?
Was the access to the parking area through the adjacent lot discussed at all when the request was submitted? Or how do you get to that parking lot without the parking where the trash cans are and stuff?
Well, let me go back one more. Since this is the property we're looking at, so having to go through and pave off the whole entire property, this is going to have to be reviewed by our natural resources coordinator, just because we are getting rid of any permeable surfaces on the property. So that'll have to be gone for review, and then, as you can see, the applicant would like to actually put a alleyway between private drive and have two curb cuts, which both would have to be reviewed by Public Works Department for curb cuts, and then also Natural Resources Coordinator would have to review for all of this paving, and then I would not be able to permit, since Young Street is the front of the building, I would not be able to permit more than 30% of the front yard to be paved, which those 4 parking spots would be more than 40%.
Okay, so he's proposing 3 cars parking for 4 units, so I guess there's street parking he's considering. But I don't know how you can present that without defining access to the parking area that he's proposing.
Not at 30%, you're not.
So,
And you got it looks like he wants street cuts in, so he's got access, like a driveway entrance.
yeah,
I would rather see the whole picture being presented and combining the lots or whatever he's got to do to get this done. I have no problem with the proposal there, but just the piece of it, I don't know how I can't vote for it without knowing how he's going to use it to start with. I mean, there's no guarantee he's going to do the rest.
right. So if the applicant did, and this becomes a situation where the applicant provided an entire site plan for something that might not actually come to fruition, but since he did submit it, I did have to send it to you, and it probably is causing some type of gray area in determining on what we're supposed to be looking at. So if the applicant did want to create this from 2 different parcels, it would have to come through you guys for several different more variances. For 30% of the parking in the front yard, since that's a number that would be coming through you. If you wanted to pave more than just the front yard at 30% here, this would have to come back. But he did not submit an application for this, right?
That's not.
And then I don't even know if this would be approved by Public Works for the curb cuts. And as far as the whole entire paved area, I don't even know if our Natural Resources Coordinator would approve that. So this is something where an application would need to be submitted to other departments, and we need to understand if they would approve it prior to this. Looking at it separately, the southern parcel for the 2-unit building would be approved. It would meet the setbacks. It would be a 2-unit residential building. That would be fine. It's more or less just the paved area, the access, some of the other things. If the applicant is not able to get the curb cuts through Public Works here and here, and the Natural Resources Coordinator said, no, you can't pave the remaining of your permeable surface, this would just have to remain as green space, in which case the applicant could put maybe a shed there or multiple sheds for the residential units. They could put a variety of different things here, maybe a playground, like a little play set for, there could be other things that could go there rather than just a parking lot. And, Young Street does have street parking, so I'm not entirely sure if the end project would look like this. So it's mostly just what we're reviewing today is, would you want to remove the middle portion? Would you permit removing of the middle portion to create 2 2-unit residential buildings when only 1 4-unit residential building is permitted? This property, up until a few years ago, was a church, and then it sat vacant the last, I think, 3 or 4 years.
So if the middle section was retained and somehow partitioned and became part of the living spaces of the church and the duplex, there'd be no need for a variance.
Right. If currently, if the applicant wanted to keep 2 2-units in the front and 2 2-units in the back, and then this middle area was just left as is, it would be permitted. It would be fine. This is when it starts becoming a little bit more conceptual than makes sense, a little bit more abstract.
Right, okay.
The way that looks to me is that the access to the back building will be through the alley. Without going on somebody else's property, I guess you could have a skinny sidewalk past the front one. I don't know how that works, but it doesn't look like there's a lot of room there.
It doesn't.
Like I said, it's still the same building. It's just gonna have, if you look at it as being the exact same building, just with a courtyard and not a covered breezeway, I feel that's pretty much exactly what is there
Not the
now.
same building, it's cut in half.
Yeah. But as far as their parking would still be on Young Street, and they could still walk from Young Street like they do now.
Well, they're going through the building probably that
Yeah.
exists today, so I'm just trying to figure out how the access to the back building without, I mean, if we want the alley access, or maybe that 3-foot green strip on the outside could be a sidewalk or something, but I don't know where the access to the buildings, they'll have to figure that out.
What's the code say about alley access?
So the access for this residential building, because it's only supposed to be one, would be on Young Street, and all access would be there. When this property was built, all the cars that you would need would be able to park on Young Street, and you'd park on Young Street, and then you'd walk into the church, or you'd walk into whatever building from Young Street. Now, if the partition or the area was removed and then it became a courtyard or it became a parking lot or whatever it ends up becoming, I would assume that access would still have to come from Young Street. You'd still have to park on Young Street, and then you'd have to walk from Young Street. Maybe there's a sidewalk added, that would be permitted, but wrapping around units 1 and 2 in the front, they would just have to take a sidewalk or something from Young Street all the way back. There would not be able to be parking in the alley in the rear.
Mr. Metz, cannot remember, do we have a front picture of the church? I feel like there is a sidewalk there currently,
sorry.
but I am not sure.
I'm in the wrong direction. Yes.
Oh, that helps.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing?
From my understanding, the church is in the front half, and then in the rear was where the pastor used to live.
Yeah.
Back here. And then this was just like a connection at some point in time. I believe it was just a roof, like a breezeway, covered walkway, and then they built walls around it.
So what is the side setback for this zone?
Like the side yard setback for this property. Zoned R4, so it would be 6 feet, but majority of these buildings, or this whole entire neighborhood was built way before the side yard setbacks or the minimum site development standards were created or were changed to what they are now. So almost every property within this neighborhood is non-conforming, just like they were on the previous property or applicant we reviewed.
So you have to assume that the sidewalk is poured right up to the property line.
I think that would be safe to say.
Well, at this time, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Identify yourself if you would, please.
My name is Michael Lee. We're at 6316 Jamestown Drive in Liberty Township, Ohio. My wife and I, my wife's there, and we bought this property. Let me tell you a little bit about us. We own a lot of rental properties in Hamilton County and Butler County. We live in Liberty Township, so we own a bunch of property, rental property in Hamilton and Hamilton area, Fairfield area, and we own a bunch of downtown Cincinnati when we lived in Cincinnati before. So this is our first project in Middletown. And when I look around and I saw this building just sit there vacant and like an eyesore for the whole city for the last 4 or 5 years, and the previous owner, he just kind of butchered up. He didn't know what he was doing. And he went in and he tore out the church and put up some 2x4, and I don't think he even get a permit. And he just left it like that, and he put it up for sale, and nobody want to touch it. So with me having an architectural background, I decided to take on this project. And the first thing that I was looking at was how much space this thing was. I mean, the church itself has like almost 2,000 square foot, and that's not even count the clear story section of it. And the school building in the back has like almost 2,700, 2,800 square feet, 2 levels. One level is like 1,400 square foot. So by looking at it, the code allows us to have a 4-family. But the middle section really have no use for us. And I talked to the city building department. If we keep that little section there, even with just the roof attached to 2 buildings, then this whole project considered a commercial project. And everything had to go through a registered architect, registered engineer. And that costs a lot of money just to get through all that. And then we don't have a use for that. Just looking at the church, I take the church and I divide it in half. And that's give me almost 1,000 square foot for each unit. And with this neighborhood, I don't know, we can only make maybe a 3-bedrooms unit at the most, and I don't know how much we can rent we can charge for that. And then the school building in the back, 1,400 square foot per each unit. That's huge, but we can't make any more unit. I'd rather have smaller unit that I can easily rent it out and make the project more feasible, but we only allowed to have 4 units. So that's why we decided if we can tear out that middle section, and then we can go back and use residential code, and I can even draw it up and apply for a permit myself, because I have an architectural background, and I'm also a contractor. I have my own crew, so to keep the cost down to get this project going. That's my goal is to get this building rehab, where I can get some tenants in there and start paying the rent and keep the place from being vandalized and not be an eyesore to the neighborhood. And the others, and then after we get this thing going, we like to have, the reason I put parking in there, because I like to have off-street parking for tenant. Most of the things that we bought have off-street parking. We don't like to buy something that the tenant have to park on the street. It's just not good to have to park your car on the street, and, when you rent something. Well, you live in a house and you have to park on the street. So that's why my idea was to have off-street parking. And also the other lot came with this property. So we thought maybe instead of, it's also allowed for 4 units, but we said, no, that's too much. So maybe we put 2 units on there, and then the rest of it we can use off-street parking for all the tenant. And that's why I came up with this design here. And now if later on when we actually go and apply for a parking area, and if they say, no, you're gonna have 3 parking spaces here, then we build 3 parking spaces. Right now, the only way to get into this property is from the alley. People just go in there and just park in there. Young Street doesn't have a curb cut, but yeah, we have to apply for a permit for that. But my main goal is to rehab this building and turn it into 4 residential units without costing an arm and leg, and then go to the next phase of the project. That's why we want to apply for this case, for this variance.
So, and please listen to my term. It is your intent to complete the second portion of this, which you have presented to the city and now to us.
Yes, I do, because
Now, it's a drawing. It's your drawing.
yes,
That is your stated intent.
yes, sir. We don't like to have something sit vacant. I mean, we rather build something and bring in money instead of just have an empty lot.
Thank you.
That's why it's such a good deal to buy this property, because the empty lot come with it.
Okay.
Any other questions from Mr. Lee?
Yes. Or if we do approve this, are you aware of the difficulties you may have in other portions of this remodel? Mr. Metz talked about?
Well, I know I talked to the city building department, I forget what his name is, but he said I can draw it up myself and use residential code instead of commercial code and apply for the building permit.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we've done a lot of construction too. I mean, once we get a permit, we got to do inspection, we got inspections and all that stuff, and make sure we pass on inspection, before we hang drywall and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He mentioned several obstacles that may occur if we do this and you go on with your second phase, so you're aware of that.
Yes. Like he said, we're not allowed to have curb cut, and we can just make a green space for the tenant. But it just helps us we don't really need that middle section. It's just way too much space. And even with just the roof attached to the 2 buildings, it's considered a commercial project and have to be licensed. Architect had to be licensed, engineer had to be licensed, just to get the permit. And so it was so ugly anyway, the way they built it, and with the way they constructed, you see inside, it's just like a mess inside. So it'd be nice to tear it out, just remove it, and have 2 nice clean building, and 2 family units in each one.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the variance, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, we'll now move to deliberation.
I had a question regarding the parking. You said the problem is that it's more than 30% of the surface area that's impervious. Is that correct?
That would just be for the second unit that he's going to build. So the southern portion here, which isn't really for review
Right.
today, parking in the front cannot exceed more than 30, or bounded and dustless material or any type of paved surface cannot exceed more than 30% of the front yard in any residential zoning district. So this parking pad, you might be able to have a driveway that comes off of Young Street. That would just be maybe like a 1 or 2 car driveway. And let's just say that, Mr. Lee wanted more, he would have to come back before the Board of Zoning Appeals to request that. Now, just for the total surface area, this would have to be reviewed by our natural resources coordinator. This is more than 1/10 of an acre. Stormwater prevention pollution plan would have to be implemented and reviewed. And then in addition to that, the curb cuts would have to be reviewed by our engineering department, as well as essentially what would be created is a private road. So that had to be reviewed as well.
So if he just did the 3 spots, then the curb cut off Young Street, would that be approved just to access those?
Are you saying for the curb cut here to come into these 3 parking spaces?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would be an excellent question because this is on a separate parcel.
Right.
So you can see the dotted line. So this whole entire curb cut would be actually on the southern property and then coming in. So he's kind of combining 2 different parcels into one to kind of create almost like a mini plan development, but it's not because it would not be permitted. So.
One point here. If they had church in there, they'd have to have a lot of cars parked out there on Young Street, so there must be parking that's adequate somewhere. So, and I think here, Stefan showed that there's access already back to the back building, so that relieves me of any concern to getting people there. It's a little awkward to park on Young, I guess, if you park in the back, but people walk further than that on their own lots to get to their home. So I think that as long as we're not violating square footage of green space or something, if he wants to take that middle section down and make 2 units of it, I don't see an objection at this point.
Especially since if he would leave it up, he wouldn't have to do anything before, so. Yeah, I just think he's got an uphill battle with both lots, but that's not what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd be in favor of it.
Just to add to discussion, I'm very familiar with it. I've showed it several times when it was for sale. That center area does not serve a purpose. And honestly, as Mr. Lee said, having 2 clean buildings there, I think would actually improve the lot, along with, at the same time, not damaging the character of the neighborhood or affecting any other surrounding residents. I think it would probably be a large improvement.
Okay.
Can we go back to the first, or the picture that showed from the street, front part of the church and all that? That's why I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's certainly nice to see that this building will be put to good use. As it stands now, it doesn't serve the city or the community well, so. One request, as we go to making a motion, would we cite the use criteria as well? So if anyone would like to make a motion for approval as we do that, if we could just cite the use criteria within the motion.
So for the use variance,
All of it.
all of them have
All
to
of
be
them have
met.
to apply.
So for the use variance, you can just approve, and then for 1400 Woodlawn, we didn't cite review criteria, although Mr. Wanamaker did hint at several review criteria, which I'll make a note of in the notes. But for this one, it just needs to be
Yeah.
approved or denied.
Right,
Okay.
right.
But I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a motion for approval?
I make a motion, we approve variance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Gary Gross,
Yes?
Jim Hall,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Christopher Ambergy,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
David Cash,
Yes.
Stefan Wanamaker.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Brings us to our next case, 2023. A request by Andrew Spurk for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 1310 Gideon Road.
So tonight before us, we have another area and dimensional variance for review by applicant Andrew Spurk at 310 Gideon Road. The property is zoned R3 Medium Density Residential District. The variance request is allow for the construction of an accessory structure that would not meet the minimum side yard setback set forth in the Middletown Development Code. Here you see the subject property, 310 Gideon. As previously mentioned, the property is zoned R3. The purpose of the R3 Medium Density Residential District is to provide for moderate density single-family residential uses in an urban setting which are completely served by public infrastructure adequate for the applicable density of development. Currently here's 310 Gideon. Here's the driveway coming in. And then the area that we'll be talking about is right here. So the Middletown Development Code, Chapter 120601, accessory uses and structures, setback and location requirements. This is for a detached accessory structure. What we're talking about will be attached. I just wanted to include that if it was detached, it would have to be 3 feet from the lot line. However, since it is attached, it would have to meet the side yard setback for the residential building, which is 7 feet. All images following were images submitted by the applicant. So here's an overview of the property showing the center line of the post. There's concrete posts that are in place, I should say, indicating where the post will go. And then it's 13.5 feet off of the building. So if we follow the site development standards right now, he would only be able to have about 4.5 feet off of his building to have some type of carport. The height will be 10 feet from driveway, so the structure can be tied to the top plate of the house, as you can see here in the green image. On the left-hand side are images showing the concrete posts that are on the 310 Gideon. And then to the right is an image showing what the carport will look like. Spend just a few seconds on this. Just some additional information. So the roof and gutter, the roof will be a gray metal roof panel, and the gutter system will be the edge of the roof. Design will not have an overhang like the one shown below, only a drip edge leading to the gutter. And then this is a neighborhood example provided by the applicant of a similar design. One thing I wanted to note, since we are talking about accessory structures, and we do talk about accessory structures quite often here at the Board of Zoning Appeals, an accessory structure such as like a shed that is detached, that is in the backyard, it can be 3 feet from the property line. A carport that is one of the ones made of tubular metal that can be placed anywhere on the property, that also has to be 3 feet from the property line. Now, when you have an accessory structure that is tied into the house, such as a deck, a front porch, or a carport off to the side, since it becomes an integral part of the house, it must meet the setbacks for the house, which in this case is 7 feet. We run into this issue quite often with porches. going into the front yard setback or decks going into the rear yard setback. So I just kind of wanted to compare. It's more comparable to a deck or a porch rather than another accessory structure such as a pool or anything else. So the requirement for legal notice for variance requests, meeting notice letters for the proposed variance were sent to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street. All comments were forwarded to the Board of Zoning Appeals. You received quite a bit of emails, some in support and then one against. The area and dimensional variance review criteria is the same as the first case. If you'd like me to read it again, I can. If not, I can pass. And then I would like to read the appeals. Any person or entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by any final action of the Board of Zoning Appeals has the right to appeal the decision to the Court of Common Pleas as provided in the Ohio Revised Code, Chapters 2505 and 2506. That ends my staff report. The applicant is present. Do you have any questions for me? And then one point of reference is an accessory structure that doesn't have to meet the 3-foot setback would be a fence. A fence could be built on the property line, just in case you guys had any questions on that.
All right, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. Identify yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Spurk, and I live at 310 Gideon. I've lived there for the past 8 years now, and slowly over time I've been kind of improving on the house that I have, and one of the things that was missing was a place to park. I have a 2500 truck that I've been parking on the side of the house for some time now, and I look to put basically a roof over it so I can keep the weather off of it, and then direct rainwater towards my existing drainage to my backyard to help my foundation and such. When I spoke with James, I did look at keeping it detached so that I could meet the 3 feet setback requirement, but because of the size of my truck, and then I also park trailers and stuff behind my house in order to maneuver how narrow it is between the 2 property lines, I needed to attach it to the house and then essentially put posts up there to hold up the side. I was not aware that I needed a request for variance before putting in the concrete post, so those were set back into my driveway.
Did you get a building permit?
I will after this, I was told. That was the steps. I should come here first and then request a building permit. And I did submit to Jim, what you guys saw would be part of my building plans, and then I would have detailed drawings included.
All zoning permits and building permits are on hold until the outcome of this decision.
Do you park other vehicles in the backyard so you drive through the?
Yes, you will be able to drive. You'll be able to drive through it. The driveway does extend. There was an existing driveway prior. When I purchased the home, that was dilapidated, so it does go in the back there. But again, it's pretty tight, and I do park a trailer in one of the blocks there. I have a boat there, and then I also park a trailer next to it.
Is there any concern with height if you end up being, you could restrict yourself if you got something tall that you want to take into?
No, actually, that is a good point. When I was having the driveway worked on, the 10 feet where it tops into the top, or where it will tie into the top plate, dump trucks are able to maneuver to the back of that yard. So I did take that into consideration to make sure if anyone needed to access the back of the property, that there is enough height there. There will also note there will be no electric. This is strictly just to keep weather off of the parked vehicle.
And I think I heard him say that you're gonna have, the gutters will be over your property, the drain line off the roof, and it'll go to the
Yes,
backyard?
and I have, when I was redoing the driveway, I have a big French drainage system going around both sides of the house, and I will tie into that.
Do you intend to put concrete in that as a base, or are you gonna?
No.
So it'll just be the gravel or what you've got now?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So on your one drawing showing the overhang on the gutters,
Yes.
it says that the rafters will stop even with the
Yes.
beam.
Sorry, go
and then there'll be a gutter put on that.
Yes, with a drip edge.
Okay, and then on this one here, where it's,
Yeah, and that's just go ahead.
okay, center line of post, is that 1.5 inches from the edge of?
1.5 feet.
1.5 feet? Okay,
And that was to stop any water or snow falling over into neighbor's driveway.
so are the railroad ties yours?
Yes. Well, previously, the homeowner of 312 back in 2016, when I bought the home, him and I worked out an agreement. There was a survey done on the property that property line goes right down between our driveways. I had an old existing gravel and asphalt. It was kind of dilapidated. He had the nicer concrete driveway, and I have it in writing that we agreed that we would put the railroad ties right between our driveways so that it kept his side nice and would stop weeds and stuff from growing. So
There's an elevation too, he's a little bit lower there on driveway than you are on your gravel.
yes, yeah, and that's when I purchased the home for whatever, I don't know if they threw extra concrete over, but that's the way my property sits up and it kind of stages down. It kind of goes down as you go down the street a little bit. So and you can see, well, if you go down the street for some reason, my foundation or block foundation also sets up higher out of the ground as well in that area compared to other homes on the street. Actually, you can kind of see it on my neighbors there on the right.
So how will you get this rainwater to your French drains?
How will I get it?
Yeah, how we,
So the gutter system will be a downspout that goes down, and then I'll just have a solid tube that goes down, basically down my driveway, and I have drains that go out of the retaining wall, so I'll just tie it into there.
Rainwater is easier to deal with than if you get a substantial snow on that roof and you have to, it goes out and dumps onto his driveway.
I don't think the pitch of the roof will allow it to, I mean, I do have a gazebo and stuff in the back. The pitch of the roof won't be very sharp. It'll be just enough to keep the rain off, so I don't intend snow. And I can also put the posts like in the, or I don't know what you call them, but to stop snow from sliding if need be.
Yeah.
Does your neighbor have a boat?
They used to.
Okay, if he doesn't park a boat there, you might be better off if you got anything coming off your roof. That's,
Yeah, and this was the previous owners before it was purchased. It was an older picture.
Where you've put at this point, where you've put the posts in the ground, how close is that to your your property line? A foot?
There's an existing fence line. You can see where that galvanized fence, the driveway. So the concrete driveway, the railroad ties meet up right to the edge. They actually go below the driveway, so they set up against it. The property line is right where the railroad ties are, and then the center line of those posts are 1.5 feet off.
Do we have a picture available of the backyard?
There's one right there.
so if you were to do maintenance in this center of this carport, would you have to access your neighbor's property to put a ladder up and everything to get on the roof or whatever you may need?
No, I could get it from the front. No, I wouldn't have to go from the side.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the variance, please come forward. Mr. Cash will swear you in.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Identify yourself if you would, please.
My name is Catherine Sunshine Summers.
Could you please speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry, I'm deaf in this ear.
Speak into the mic.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry. I live immediately adjacent at 312. And there were things that Andrew said that were not truthful, and I do not want to be here to do this. I am a lifelong Middletown resident. This is like the fourth or fifth home I've owned here. I've owned businesses here. I believe in the code of law, and I have always contributed to this city. Perhaps they don't do the same things that we do in Pittsburgh, but I believe in telling the truth. I don't believe in pinning on people's personal property, and the only reason that Andrew is here is because he got caught. And he poured those footers, and someone said something to the board or someone, and that's why he's here. Andrew has other things on his property that he failed to mention, including a very large structure in his backyard that could very well be a hazard. It's large enough to house an RV, and he could very well abut another structure for his truck. He has a garage. He has a very large backyard, as most of the Gideon properties do. There's no reason whatsoever. 10 feet is probably from you, sir, to here, at best. That's how far those footers are from my home. And when he poured those footers, I asked him, "Are you putting in a fence?" "Yes." That's what I was told. And then the footer that's closest to the back starts this high off the ground. My home is small, and the thing that he is planning on building will be taller. If you see where that back footer starts at the middle of my windows, and this is going to be taller than my home, and the front footer extends past the front of my home. Just because he doesn't want to take care of his trees that are constantly dropping things, it's ruined my siding, my roof, my gutters. I was taught to respect other people's properties and take care of your stuff. And Andrew, I've addressed the French drains that he referenced. They're back past that tree, under that structure that he built, and instead of having them go downhill on his property, he's had them at a 45 going on my property towards my shed, and I asked him, "Could you do something about that? It's deteriorating the floor of my shed." "Oh, it was like that before." Well, no, only that side in that specific area where those French drains are, hitting my shed, is deteriorated. Andrew does what Andrew wants to do for himself without regard to the neighbors. That's what's going on here. He poured those footers without getting a permit, just like he did. He put that thing in the back without getting a permit. My neighbor that's here with me, 3 o'clock in the morning, he's pouring gravel and putting this thing in the backyard. She's trying to sleep. She knows those are not 1.5 feet off the property line. That is dishonest. That is on the property line. I have pictures on my phone. I can look out and just about touch those footers. So that is dishonest. He was dishonest about his purpose, and I believe codes are there for a reason, and I'm also worried about flashover. If there's a fire underneath a structure, my home is right there. We're talking about a serious safety issue, okay? But he's disregarded all these things. Andrew is an engineer. He knows these things, but he's disregarded all these things. He's disregarded codes, permits, and all that because he's got another toy and he just wants to do what he wants to do, and he does it without concern for Middletown's laws, permits, or thoughts of his neighbor. Period. That's what he does. Just like he was pouring gravel and building a structure in the backyard that is not on footers, as far as I can tell, but railroad ties, and it's as tall as that white thing, because I'm nervous and I don't like to talk in front of all you guys. I'm sorry, because I don't want to be here doing this. I don't like having any kind of animosity towards anybody. That's my retirement home. You know, I owned a business here longer than Andrew's been alive. I don't want to fight with anybody, you know, but this is BS, what he's done here, okay? This is not good, it's not safe, it's against code, and I strongly disagree with this. There's so many reasons not to allow this variance. I could go on, but I won't. So, do you guys have any questions? I've got images. I was a photographer for 30 years. So this is what, it really is upsetting to me that you, and here's one more thing I'm going to say. If we allow people to go ahead and do whatever they want to do without calling them on it or having them get permits or facing the consequences, and you allow my property and my person to be put in jeopardy without consequence of what could happen because of safety, then I think we're setting a very dangerous precedent. You know, I'm very concerned. 10 feet is not very far away. It's between me and this gentleman. That's it. If that's, you know, that's about 10 feet, maybe even further. And that's how far we're talking from those footers. I've done construction. When I looked at those footers and he told me that was for a fence, I really thought something wasn't right. So he's lied to me. He's
Ma'am.
done things on that property
Ma'am.
that have caused me issues.
Ma'am, you need to address the application that's in front of you and not address the applicant.
Well,
Okay.
I'm just saying, you know, we have codes for safety.
You need to be addressing the board when speaking, and you need to be speaking on the application,
I
not
am speaking
attacking
on
the applicant.
application. We have codes and laws for a reason, and safety is a big concern here. So that's what I'm saying. I am worried about safety, not even, and you know, it's going to go over top of my property and extend past my property. So that's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
I'm sorry?
I've got a question. On your house here, is that?
Yes, he's got the footer going past the front.
Well, I'm asking about is this your downspout and gutter going to the backyard?
Yes, sir. It was like that when I purchased it.
Where is this French drain that you're both talking about?
It's in the rear of his home. He has a structure in the back of his home. And underneath it, he put in French.
Ma'am, you need to speak from the dais. You need to speak from the dais.
I'm sorry. It's in the rear of his home, that you can't see it in that image. But when you look at this image, you see I've had to put a tarp on the top of my home because of this pine tree that he refuses to take care of, which is one of the reasons he wants to put that structure there, because he doesn't want to get that on his new truck. He wants to protect his truck from that pine tree. But I've got issues with my roof and gutter and siding now because of that tree that he will not address.
Thank you, Ms. Summers. I think we understand
Thank you.
your concerns. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I do have a question about, let's go back to the picture with the, right here. I mean, there was, I'm not certain if it was the applicant or it may have been Mr. Spurk, but when we say this is a similar structure to maybe one of the other structures in the neighborhood, certainly a carport on the side, but these are sizable structures that we have listed here. I have to be honest, that gives me some pause in what you're proposing. When I think about a carport, or if I think about something that would be there, typically we don't see something on this scale for a carport. So, yeah. Yes, please. Yeah, yeah, come on.
Good question. So the reason I went with these are, the picture might make them look larger, but they're an 8-inch diameter footer, and I plan on putting 6x6s up. I do know, like when you look at the structure that is presented there as an example, it has only 3 posts. I decided to beef it up. Essentially, I just wanted to make it as strong as possible.
So this drawing itself, how tall, what you're proposing, is this an accurate representation of what you're proposing? And or is this the scale that, or are you proposing something higher that would come off of your home?
This is an accurate representation. I'm not sure about the height from the door, but the one photo that I have shows the line of where it would actually meet the house, the green line right there. It's right above my windows and then would slant down from that. And the reason for that is so that it could be tied into the top plate of the house.
And how high is that?
It's about 10 feet
Says 10
from my driveway up. And I think one of the zoning said it couldn't be above 15, something like that.
I got a question about the stuff you have in your backyard.
Yes.
You have a facility to park some things inside?
No, it's a all steel like carport, just all open up, just a roof, and I park a boat underneath it, a trailer and a boat. And I had that prior to this. There's a gate, which you can't see. There's a gate to keep my dog in the backyard. It's right there, so I normally park right up against the house.
This is just a comment, Mr. Spurk, and this does not necessarily mean one way or the other as I make this to you, but this is a tough case for me, honestly, and we run into this particular issue often. One of the challenges for me when I look at this is whether or not it imposes on a neighbor, the scale that would be presented. And often when we see cases where you have a boat and a trailer and other things, I mean, this is, while the lots are large on Gideon, when we start to add additional stuff on a property, boats, those sorts of things, when it becomes large-scale project, that does give me some pause when I try to review a case like this.
Understood, yeah.
So, just wanted to.
Yeah, and I understand your point. I guess I can only say back is that we all park normally on the side, and I just don't have the room to park back there, given that I do have a trailer and a boat.
Mm-hmm.
Just to provide a point of clarity, a trailer or a boat or anything else would be permitted to be parked in your side or rear yard as long as it's on an improved parking surface.
And I do not have any other like sheds or stuff like that. I have stacked up wood next to my deck. So
from a standpoint of limitations, city, James, he could actually expand the parking area in the rear if he wanted to and cover it?
Well, as you can see right now, the driveway's gravel. It's been gravel for as long as our records have it. But if you wanted to expand parking in the rear of, I'm trying to get an overhead view real quick. And then this has been gravel for as long as we have record. Let's just say that he wanted to clear all these trees out and put down some type of bounded and dustless material, so concrete, pavers, asphalt, something of the sort. He would be able to do that up until a tenth of an acre, and then anything over a tenth of an acre would have to have a SWIP done. And our natural resources coordinator would still have to review it depending on the surface size of it. But parking could be extended in the backyard. I just wanted to add, because you mentioned the boat and the trailer, that those are permitted.
Actually, what I was thinking, this is kind of what I'm saying, is what you're asking, is it feasible, or would it make more sense to utilize space in the back to accomplish the same ends?
understood. What isn't shown in this aerial view is there is a retaining wall holding back that gravel there. So there's like a 4-foot retaining wall so that my property just completely drops off. This is all on a big hill here. So in order to do that, I'd have to rip out, a retaining wall and expand, basically to access the whole backyard. So it does drop off quite a bit.
This is why I was asking if we had more pictures of the backyard.
How do you
From
get
the
your
drainage and to this that he mentions now. I wish we had more pictures. So we could really see, we can't really see what's going on.
If,
Just need a topographic.
if you, so if I understand correctly, at the west end of your driveway is a retaining wall
Yes,
that drops 4 feet
to grass.
approximately to your backyard.
And there's a small, where the, if you go, yeah, right where his mouse is up north,
How do you get your boat out of your backyard?
I pull it up along the side of the house. It just goes down slightly. So the top.
Which side? Which side?
On the south side.
You and the pointer. It's the top button. You're going the wrong direction.
Yeah,
How do I go back? Oh,
yeah.
Here we go.
Go back to your overhead. There you go.
Okay. Okay, so this is my existing driveway right now. It's hard to see because of trees. It goes down here and goes up and back. So this all is like a gravel. This was grass here, but I just made this all gravel to make it easier to maintain. This is all flat here, and then it starts to, as soon as I get to the back of my house, it starts to dip down on a slight hill. The retaining wall was to level out this area right here so that I could park a trailer or now a boat there, and I use this area right here to turn. There is a small garage that's underneath. I can't fit, I can't fit my truck in here. It's a very small, but it was a gravel driveway to go around here. I guess someone did park a car at some point in the past. So yeah, and then the retaining wall kind of runs here.
Oh, it's
up along the side, just to keep all the gravel from flowing into the backyard.
so it's not at the end of your driveway.
Say that, what is not?
So the retaining wall, I got the impression that at the end of your driveway, there was a 4-foot drop off to your backyard.
Yes, the driveway is right here, and this would be the end, and then the drop-off is right here.
No, I'm talking about the driveway that you anticipate putting, over which you put.
Oh, here.
Anticipate putting the lean-to.
No. It is,
Okay.
there's maybe a foot from the top of the railroad tie down to,
So you have driving access to your backyard.
I do, yes. That's how I pull. I can pull, basically I can maneuver slightly here and I can pull down to the back. And there was a question on drainage, so I can show with the mouse where everything is, but essentially there is a drainage line, French drain, that runs the length of the property right here where you see this sidewalk. It goes about 3 feet off of the 3 feet off the side of my house, goes all the way back, ties into a downspout right here, goes all the way back, ties into a downspout down here, goes back to the side of this carport or boat right here and empties out and does a 90 down to the ground.
That's all underground.
It is all underground, and then there's pea gravel on it, so it allows the water and everything to leach down into it. I had a lot of problems when I first bought this house with water in the basement, pooling up in the front yard. And I also did put one down this side of the house that goes along the side, and I helped my neighbor do one on his side too. So that's the drainage situation.
So I have a question just about the code. Let's go back to the code just for a moment. So is the primary issue then, James, that when we think about the minimum of 3 feet from that lot line, is that the primary issue here?
Well, since it is an attached structure, it is 7 feet. If it was detached, like any detached accessory structure, such as like a shed or like a tubular carport or a floating deck or anything of that sort, it would be 3 feet. But when it becomes attached to the house, such as an attached carport or an attached deck or an attached porch, it then has to meet the site development standards, which is in the table right here. Right. So for the R3, it's 7 feet.
So his design itself being the way that it's his overall design, making it an attached.
Yes. Yeah, and that we looked at the 3 feet, and essentially if you take 3 feet off each side, you would not be able to park underneath it. So I can't make it wide enough, I should say, to park underneath it.
Made our job tough tonight.
I didn't hear you.
I said, this is a tough one tonight.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
yeah.
So, if I can to clarify, so right now, currently, the footers for those posts are 1.5 feet off the property line?
Off of so the property line from the previous owner back in 2016 is that our driveways touch. The 1.5 foot you see, or that I've listed here, is the center line of those columns to the edge of the railroad tie, which would be to the edge of the concrete. There's a straight line right there. So if you want to say to the edge of that concrete, it would be a foot.
Okay, so to go along with the detached accessory structure of a 3-foot setback, that would leave you with 12 foot wide from the house.
Well, I'd also have to put something from the house 3 feet in.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we had an attached structure, but we gave a variance for a 3-foot setback, then you'd have a 12 foot wide.
Yes.
And you would be able to move those footers, and you'd be willing to do something like that to move it back in?
Essentially, what I would do is I put metal and everything. Well, I put rebar and everything in it. I would jackhammer them out and re-pour back to get that. So, and again, I was not aware that I had to get a variance. I figured it's a roof to just cover the truck. So I had done that. So.
You know, I get it, and then I never get it. I talk about this all the time. How we adults, we think we're gonna have a project. We don't ever think that maybe there's a code, maybe there's a rule.
Yeah, well, I figured family dwelling, something I was living in, or power that was fully enclosed. And again, I saw a lot of my neighbors have a similar structure, so that's where I got the idea.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
That, you're guilty of just being human.
Yeah.
That's all.
So, kind of picking up on Mr. Wanamaker's point about bringing that back in 3 feet, just trying to look at this in a practical way to solve your problem. Assume that we were to try to bring those posts back in 3 feet. Does that solve your issue?
So 1.5 feet from the existing point, or 3 feet from its initial point?
So we'd have to meet this 3 feet setback.
Yeah, so it would be moving, the center line of those would come back, well, no, they'd come back about 2 feet. So, yeah, I could do that.
No, it'd have to come back more than that, the center line.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I was saying the edge of them would come back.
Well, I'm just saying, we think about an accessory structure. I'm trying to look at just the overall scale. I think I'm uncomfortable being a 1.5 feet off the property line just to accommodate. For me, that becomes an issue.
Okay.
I mean, the code itself is pretty clear on what's expected. So then I look at this in terms of just trying to be reasonable, figure out some practical way of solving the problem, but it seems to me that we're right on the property line to accommodate you. And that, for me, takes it a step too far.
Okay.
So I'm looking for guidance.
Well, I don't have guidance. You do.
I don't have guidance, it's got a comment that zoning's there to prevent encroachment on your neighbors. And that's exactly what this is. And to me, it makes no difference, attached or detached, it's still
Yeah.
too close.
And I think that's a good point. I will say the house that is adjacent, the next house over, is basically built right where those railroad ties are. So the house next to it, there are houses on our street that.
We didn't,
Yeah, I know that. I'm just. And
But I can
looking at it
see-
being open, I didn't think, I'm not enclosing anything or building an enclosed garage. This is a south-facing wall, so there will be no natural light that's impeded.
so I'm concerned about water, I'm concerned about snow falling in your neighbor's driveway.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
it's,
pitch on that roof in your drawing is steeper than what you're.
And again, that,
verbalizing.
yes, no, and I understand that was just, I found instead of making a SolidWorks model, I did not have, I was given 2 days to comply, so I found something, and
I
there is,
accept that.
yeah, there is a note,
Just mention it.
yeah,
for
there is a
sure.
note to say that is
Because
just a
he's right.
reference, yeah.
He's right. that
So
it-
drainage will be managed with the existing drainage that I have on the property, and then there can be, snow mitigation, like posts put in on top of the roof, I can easily screw that in.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, so, again, as we move to making a motion, I want to encourage us to also state the criteria. So, anyone like to make a motion?
I'll pull the review criteria back up real quick.
You know, I see your point in wanting to have something there for your truck. You know, I certainly do. I think the problem, again, as I stated, being right on that property line, you know, having this detached in some way, I mean, do you want us to vote on this, or would you want to pull your motion? Is there a way for us to solve this problem otherwise?
It seemed like Mr. Wanamaker was suggesting letting it remain attached, but reducing the side yard setback from what would be a attached down to a detached up to 3 feet, if I was correct on that.
From 7 foot to 3 foot.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be an option to consider if there would be discussion to be had on it. I think it's, again, it is a variance that's being provided, but it also does cure some problems, so that was my thought on that.
Any other comments from the board? We think about this idea of bringing this,
Well, I think, you know, I'm preaching about the rights of ownership all the time. I believe in it very strongly, and here we are. We have two owners here tonight. And I'll be damned if their driveways don't join one another right on the property line. So that makes it rough for me, and the only way I can vote for it to approve the variance would be to go the route you mentioned.
I don't think 3 feet is sufficient, even with the consideration of detached or undetached. I feel that this is going to impinge in any case, and I am not in favor of this variance at all.
I agree 100%.
And I felt the same way. My only concern is if the house had been built 3 foot 1 inch to the right, he could put a tubular steel carport up at the 3 foot line and we wouldn't even be here. So, but it isn't that way. So, it's a matter of which would be uglier and more detrimental, I guess, but,
Well, as presented, I move that we reject the variance request.
do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Metz, when you're ready, call the roll.
Stefan Wanamaker,
no,
this is to deny.
no to deny.
No to deny. Okay. David Cash,
Yes.
Wait a minute, let's get this straight. Yes to deny? You said no. Do you mean yes to deny?
I do not want to deny. I wouldn't-
Okay.
He says no to
and then David Cash, or Mr.
Yes.
Cash was yes to deny. Jerry Heidenreich
Yes?
to deny. Chris Rambergy,
Yes to deny.
Todd Moore,
Yes to deny.
Jim Hall,
Yes to deny.
Gary Gross.
Yes to deny.
Okay.
Okay, that brings us to new or old business. Any new or old business this evening?
Now, if we have any applications, they'll be seen at the November 1st meeting.
Okay, that brings us to adjournment. All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?